My name is Don, and I am 56 years old. For the past 2 years, I let my daughter and her boyfriend live in my house completely rent-free. I thought I was being a good father, helping her get on her feet after college. But last month, she screamed at me to either pay rent or get out of my own home. I looked her in the eye, said okay, and walked out the door. A week later, I sold the house. Before I tell you what happened next, I would love to know where you are watching this from. Drop your location in the comments below. And if you have ever felt taken for granted by someone you love, go ahead and hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel because this story is about to show you what happens when kindness gets mistaken for weakness. Now let me take you back to where it all began. I need to give you some background so you understand how I ended up in this situation. My life was not always this complicated. There was a time when everything made sense when I knew my role and felt good about it. I became a single father when my daughter Stephanie was just 12 years old. My wife Catherine died in a car accident back in 2009. One moment she was driving home from the grocery store, and the next moment, my whole world collapsed. I remember getting the call from the hospital. I remember standing in that sterile hallway, being told she did not make it. I remember going home to tell Stephanie that her mother was never coming back. Those years after Catherine passed were the hardest of my life. I was a plumber, working long hours, fixing pipes and water heaters all over Phoenix, Arizona. The pay was decent, nothing fancy but enough to keep us afloat. I worked the day shift, came home to cook dinner for Stephanie, helped her with homework, even though I barely understood algebra myself. I drove her to soccer practice, attended every parent-teacher conference, made sure she had clean clothes and a roof over her head. I never complained, not once, because that is what fathers do. You step up when life knocks you down. You do not give yourself time to fall apart because someone depends on you. Stephanie was my whole world. She was all I had left of Catherine, and I was determined to give her the best life I could. Looking back now, I realize I probably spoiled her. I said yes too often. When she wanted new sneakers that cost $120, I bought them even though my boots had holes in the soles. When she wanted to go on the school trip to California, I picked up extra shifts to make it happen. I told myself I was making up for the fact that she lost her mother. I thought love meant giving everything and asking for nothing in return. Stephanie did well in school. She was not a straight-A student, but she got by. She had friends, played on the soccer team for a while, seemed like a normal teenager. When she graduated high school in 2015, I was so proud I cried during the ceremony. She got accepted to the University of Arizona in Tucson to study marketing. I took out loans, worked overtime, did whatever it took to pay for her tuition and dorm fees. I sent her money every month for food and expenses. She was my investment in the future. 4 years later, in 2019, Stephanie graduated with her bachelor's degree. I drove down to Tucson for the ceremony, took 100 pictures, told everyone I met that my daughter was a college graduate. I thought this was the beginning of her success story. I thought all those years of sacrifice were finally paying off. But then she moved back home. At first it was supposed to be temporary. She said she needed time to find a job, get her bearings, figure out her next step. I understood that. The job market can be tough, especially for new graduates. So I said of course she could stay with me. My door was always open for her. Around that same time, I made what I thought was a smart decision. I bought a house. It was 2015, right before Stephanie went to college, and I figured it was time to stop renting. I found a nice 2-story place in the suburbs of Phoenix. 4 bedrooms, a big backyard, solid construction. The mortgage was steep, but I could handle it with my income and some careful budgeting. I thought to myself, one day, this house will be Stephanie's. This will be my legacy to her. The house became my pride. I kept it clean, mowed the lawn. Every Saturday, fixed things as soon as they broke. It was the first thing I ever truly owned, and it meant the world to me. When Stephanie moved back after graduation, she took the big bedroom upstairs. I did not mind. I wanted her to be comfortable. She spent the first few months applying for jobs online, or at least that is what she told me. I would come home from work and find her on the couch with her laptop. She said she was networking, sending out resumes, waiting for callbacks. I believed her. But as the months passed, I started noticing things. She slept in at her and later. She stopped dressing professionally. She spent more time scrolling through social media than actually job hunting. When I gently suggested she try harder, she got defensive. She said I did not understand how tough the market was, how competitive everything had become. I backed off. I did not want to pressure her. Then she started dating Kyle. Kyle was 28 years old, 3 years older than Stephanie. He had a scruffy beard, wore the same hoodie most days, and did not seem to have a steady job. He did gig work here and there, delivery driving some handyman jobs. Nothing consistent. I did not like him from the start, but I kept my mouth shut. Stephanie seemed happy, and I did not want to be the overbearing father who drove her away. Kyle started spending more and more time at my house. At first, it was just dinner here and there. Then he was staying over on weekends. Then he was there almost every night. He ate my food, used my internet, left his shoes by the front door. I tried to be patient. Young people date. This was normal. But then Stephanie asked me the question I should have said no to. It was about 6 months after she moved back home. We were sitting at the kitchen table, and she had that look on her face, the one she used to give me when she was little and wanted something. She said Dad Kyle is having a hard time financially right now. He is about to lose his apartment. Can he stay here for a little while? Just until he gets back on his feet, I hesitated. Every instinct told me this was a bad idea. But when I looked at my daughter's hopeful face, I could not say no. I set some ground rules. I told her Kyle needed to help around the house and actively look for steady work. She agreed immediately, promised it would only be temporary. Kyle moved in the following week, and that is when my life started to spiral. The first few weeks after Kyle moved in were tolerable. He was polite enough, said thank you when I cooked dinner, nodded when I passed him in the hallway. But that politeness did not last long. Within a month, Kyle had made himself completely at home. He took over the living room, sprawling on my couch for hours, watching television shows I never heard of. His stuff started appearing everywhere. Shoes by the door, jackets on the chairs, dirty dishes left in the sink. I would come home after a 10-hour shift, tired and aching, only to find the house a mess, and Kyle lounging like he owned the place. I tried talking to Stephanie about it. I said, "Honey, I thought Kyle was going to help out around here." She brushed me off. She said he was looking for work, that he was stressed that I needed to give him time. I bit my tongue and said nothing more. Then the groceries started disappearing faster than I could buy them. I would stock the fridge on Sunday, and by Wednesday, everything was gone. I am talking entire packages of lunch meat, boxes of cereal, cartons of milk. When I asked about it, Stephanie said they were eating. Well, of course they were eating, but I was the only one paying for the food. My electric bill shot up too. I noticed Kyle and Stephanie had installed a portable air conditioning unit in their bedroom without asking me. They ran it constantly, even when they were not home. When the bill came, it was $200 higher than usual. I showed it to Stephanie. She looked at me like I was being unreasonable. She said, "Dad, it was hot." What did you expect us to do, suffer? I wanted to scream. I wanted to say that I had lived in Arizona my whole life and managed just fine with a regular fan. But instead, I paid the bill and said nothing. The weekends were the worst. Kyle and Stephanie started inviting friends over for parties. Not big, raging parties, but enough people to make noise, drink beer, leave a mess. I would be upstairs trying to sleep because I had to work early the next morning, and I could hear music thumping through the floor. One night I came downstairs at 2 in the morning and asked them to keep it down. Kyle laughed and said, "Dude, it is only 2. Relax." Dude. He called me dude. Stephanie did not even defend me. She just shrugged and turned the music down a little. I went back upstairs, feeling like a stranger in my own home. Then there was the car incident. I owned a 15-year-old truck that I used for work. It was not fancy, but it ran well, and I took care of it. One afternoon I came home and noticed a fresh scratch along the passenger side. I asked Stephanie if she knew what happened. She said Kyle borrowed the truck to pick up some supplies. He did not ask for permission. He just took my keys and drove off. When I confronted Kyle, he shrugged. He said, "Oh yeah, I needed to grab something. No big deal." He did not apologize for the scratch. He did not offer to fix it. He acted like I was overreacting. I was furious, but I swallowed it down. I kept telling myself this was temporary. They would get jobs soon. They would move out. I just needed to be patient a little longer. Months turned into a year. Then a year turned into 2 years. And nothing changed. Stephanie did pick up some part-time work. She waitressed at a diner a few days a week, brought home maybe $200 every 2 weeks. It was not enough to live on, but I kept hoping it was a start. Kyle did delivery driving occasionally, but his income was sporadic at best. Neither of them contributed a single dollar toward rent, utilities, or groceries. I was 56 years old doing the hardest physical labor of my life and supporting 2 adults who should have been supporting themselves. My back hurt constantly. I had trouble sleeping. I stopped going out with my friends because I could not afford it. Every penny I made went toward keeping that house running and feeding 3 people. And the worst part, Stephanie and Kyle did not even seem grateful. They acted like this arrangement was normal, like I owed them this. When I tried to bring up the idea of them finding their own place, Stephanie got defensive. She said, "Dad, we cannot afford rent right now. You know that." I felt guilty for even asking. The distance between Stephanie and me grew wider every day. We barely talked anymore. When I tried to have a conversation, she gave me one-word answers. She spent all her time with Kyle, and I became background noise in my own house. I started to resent coming home. My house. The place I had worked so hard to buy felt like a prison. I would sit in my truck in the driveway for 10 minutes before going inside, just trying to prepare myself for whatever mess or drama waited for me. One night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, and I thought about Catherine. I wondered what she would say if she could see how things had turned out. Would she be disappointed in me for being too soft? Or would she tell me I was doing the right thing by helping our daughter? I did not have an answer. All I knew was that something had to change. I could not keep living like this, but I had no idea how to fix it without losing my daughter forever. 2 years. 730 days of walking on eggshells in my own home. By the fall of 2022, I was running on fumes. Physically exhausted, emotionally drained, financially stretched thinner than I had ever been in my life. The mortgage payment was due on the 1st of every month like clockwork, $1,250. Then there was the electric bill, which stayed high because of that air conditioning unit. The water bill, because Kyle took 30-minute showers. The internet bill, because they streamed movies all day. The grocery bill that had tripled since they moved in. Car insurance, property tax, home repairs. I was working 50 to 60 hours a week just to keep up. My body was falling apart. My knees ached when I climbed ladders. My lower back sent sharp pains up my spine every time I bent down to work on a pipe. I had started taking ibuprofen like candy, just to get through the day. And what did I get in return? Nothing. Not a thank you. Not a kind word. Not even basic respect. Stephanie had become someone I did not recognize. The sweet little girl who used to hug me goodnight was gone. In her place was a woman who looked at me with annoyance, who treated me like an inconvenience. Kyle was even worse. He walked past me like I was invisible. He helped himself to whatever he wanted. He acted like he was doing me a favor by existing in my space. I tried one more time to have a serious conversation with Stephanie. It was a Sunday afternoon in early October. Kyle had gone out somewhere, and I found Stephanie in the kitchen making coffee. I took a deep breath and said, "Sweetheart, we need to talk." She rolled her eyes. About what I said. "It has been 2 years. Do not you think it is time for you and Kyle to start thinking about getting your own place?" Her face went cold. She said, "Are you kicking me out?" I said, "No. I just think it would be good for you to be independent. You are 25 years old. You should be living your own life." She slammed her mug down on the counter. She said, "I cannot afford rent, Dad. You know that. Not everyone is lucky enough to own a house." Lucky. She called me lucky. Like I had not worked myself half to death for 40 years to get here. Like this house had just fallen into my lap. I said, "Maybe if you worked full-time instead of part-time, you could save up." She cut me off. She said, "I am trying, Dad. The job market is terrible. Not everyone has it as easy as you did. As easy as I did." I almost laughed. I wanted to tell her about the nights I went to bed hungry as a kid, about dropping out of community college because I could not afford books, about working 2 jobs after Catherine died so she could have soccer cleats and birthday parties. But I did not say any of that. I just stood there, feeling like a fool. Stephanie stormed out of the kitchen. The conversation was over. A week later, the electric bill came. $340. I stared at that number for a long time. I thought about how many hours I had to work to earn $340 after taxes. I thought about my aching back and swollen knees. I thought about eating ramen noodles for dinner 3 nights a week, while Kyle and Stephanie ordered takeout. Something inside me started to crack. Then came the car incident that pushed me closer to the edge. I had parked my truck in the driveway as usual. When I went out the next morning, I found the driver's side mirror hanging by a wire, completely busted. I went inside and asked who had used my truck. Kyle admitted he borrowed it again without asking. He said he accidentally clipped a mailbox backing out. He said it like it was funny. I said, "You need to pay to fix this." He laughed. He actually laughed. He said, "Man, I do not have money for that. It is just a mirror. You can still drive it." I looked at Stephanie, waiting for her to say something to tell her boyfriend he was out of line, but she just looked away. She did not have my back. She never did anymore. I went to work that day, feeling something I had never felt toward my daughter before. Anger. Real, deep anger. Not frustration. Not disappointment. Anger. That night I could not sleep. I lay in bed listening to Kyle and Stephanie laughing in the next room, and I realized something. They were not going to change. This was not temporary. This was my life now, unless I did something about it. But what could I do? Kick out my own daughter? The thought made me sick. She was all I had left of Catherine. If I pushed her away, I might lose her forever. So I did nothing. I went to work the next day and the day after that. I paid the bills. I kept my head down. I told myself to be patient just a little longer. But the resentment was building like pressure in a pipe, and I knew eventually something was going to burst. It happened on a Saturday morning in late October, the day that changed everything. I had worked a long shift the day before, did not get home until almost 9 at night. My back was killing me. All I wanted was to take a hot shower and go to bed. But when I walked in, Kyle and Stephanie had thrown another one of their little get-togethers. 6 or 7 people I did not know. Music playing, beer bottles everywhere. I did not say anything. I just went upstairs, took my shower, and tried to sleep. But the noise went on until past midnight. I lay there staring at the ceiling, feeling my blood pressure rise with every thump of the bass. The next morning I woke up at 6:30 out of habit, even though it was my day off. I went downstairs and the house was a disaster. Empty bottles on the coffee table, food wrappers on the floor. Someone had spilled something sticky on the kitchen counter and did not clean it up. The sink was full of dirty dishes. I stood there in my own kitchen looking at the mess, and something inside me just snapped. I started cleaning. I gathered up the bottles, wiped down the counter, loaded the dishwasher. I was not being nice. I was furious. But I did not know what else to do with the energy burning through me. Around 9 o'clock, Stephanie came downstairs. Her hair was messy, her eyes half closed. She looked at me cleaning and said, "Why are you making so much noise?" I stopped. I turned to look at her. I said, "I am cleaning up your mess." She yawned. She said, "We were going to clean it later." I said, "Later. Just like you were going to get full-time jobs later. Just like you were going to move out later." "When exactly is later, Stephanie?" Her eyes narrowed. She said, "What is your problem?" I said. "My problem is that I have been supporting you and your boyfriend for 2 years. My problem is that you treat this house like a hotel and me like a servant. My problem is that I am 56 years old and breaking my back to keep a roof over your head, and you cannot even show me basic respect." She crossed her arms. She said, "Wow. So that is how you really feel. Your own daughter is a burden." I said I did not say that. She said, "You did not have to. I can tell. You resent me being here." I said I resent being taken advantage of. Kyle came down the stairs, then probably drawn by the sound of raised voices. He stood next to Stephanie, with his arms crossed like they were a united front against me. Stephanie said, "If you hate us being here so much, maybe you should do something about it." I said, "Maybe you should do something about it. You are 25. You should be living on your own." Kyle jumped in then. He said, "Maybe if you helped us more, we would not be in this situation." I turned to him, and I swear I saw red. I said, "Helped you more. I have been helping you for 2 years. I have given you a free place to live. I have fed you. I have paid for everything. What more do you want?" he said. "You own this house. It is not like it costs you anything to let us stay." I could not believe what I was hearing. I said, "It costs me everything. Do you have any idea how much I pay every month just to keep this place running?" Stephanie said, "That is your choice. You are the one who bought a house you cannot afford." I stared at her. My own daughter. The little girl I raised. And she was looking at me like I was the problem. That is when she said it. She said, "You know what, Dad? If you are going to complain this much, then maybe you should pay rent too." The words hung in the air. I said, "What?" She was angry now, her voice rising. She said, "Yeah, if you want to live in your own house, then pay rent or get out." Kyle laughed. It was a mean laugh, like he thought this was all a joke. But Stephanie was not joking. Her face was serious. She said it again, louder this time. "Pay rent or get out." I looked at my daughter. I looked at this person I had sacrificed everything for. And I saw a stranger. I felt something break inside my chest. Not my heart. Something deeper. Some fundamental belief I had held about love and family and what it meant to be a father. I took a breath. I said very quietly, "Huh?" Stephanie blinked. She said, "What I said." Okay. You want me to pay rent or leave? I choose to leave. She laughed, but it was uncertain now. She said, Dad, do not be dramatic. I said, I am not being dramatic. This is your decision. You told me to pay or leave. I am leaving. Kyle said. Wait, what? I looked at him. I said, you two can have the house. I am done. Stephanie said, Dad, come on. I did not mean it like that. I said, yes, you did. And you know what? You are right. It is time for me to go. I walked past them and went upstairs to my bedroom. My hands were shaking. My heart was pounding. But I also felt something I had not felt in 2 years. Clarity. I pulled my old duffel bag out of the closet and started packing. Clothes, toiletries, my important documents. I moved quickly mechanically. I did not let myself think too hard about what I was doing. Stephanie followed me upstairs. She stood in my doorway and said, Dad, where are you going? I said, I told you, I am leaving. She said, but this is your house. I said, you just told me to get out of it. So I am getting out. She said, I did not think you would actually leave. I stopped packing and looked at her. I said, why not? You made it very clear that I am not welcome here, so I am going somewhere I am welcome. She said, where? I said, that is not your concern anymore. I finished packing. 3 bags. That was all I needed. Everything else could stay. Let them have it all. I carried my bags downstairs. Kyle was standing in the living room looking confused. Stephanie was following me saying, Dad, please, we can talk about this. But I was done talking. I had been talking for 2 years and nobody listened. I loaded my bags into my truck. Stephanie came out onto the driveway. She said, Dad, do not do this. I am sorry. I did not mean what I said. I looked at her one last time. I said, yes, you did. And that is okay. You are an adult now. You get to make your own choices. This is mine. I got in my truck and drove away. In my rearview mirror, I could see Stephanie standing in the driveway looking small and confused. But I did not turn around. I drove straight to my buddy Larry's apartment across town. Larry and I had known each other since high school. He was a good man. Divorced, lived alone in a modest 2-bedroom place. I called him from the road. I said, Larry, I need a favor. Can I crash at your place for a while? He did not even hesitate. He said, of course, buddy. What happened? I said, I will explain when I get there. 20 minutes later, I was sitting on Larry's couch and the whole story came pouring out. I told him everything. The 2 years of freeloading, the disrespect, the final argument, the way Stephanie told me to pay rent or get out of my own house. Larry just shook his head. When I finished, he said, man, I am sorry. That is rough. I said, I do not know if I did the right thing. She is my daughter. He said, she is also 25 years old, and she needs to learn that actions have consequences. I said, I just feel like I failed her somehow, like I raised her wrong. Larry said, you did not fail her. You loved her. But sometimes love means letting people face the results of their choices. That night I barely slept. I kept replaying the argument in my head. I kept seeing the look on Stephanie's face when I drove away. Part of me wanted to go back. Part of me wanted to apologize and pretend nothing happened. But I did not. The next morning, I made a decision. I called a real estate agent named Patricia that I had met a few years back at a community event. She answered on the 3rd ring. I said, Patricia, this is Don Thompson. I need to sell my house. She said, well, I would be happy to help. When were you thinking? I said, as soon as possible. She paused. She said, "Is everything okay?" I gave her the short version. She listened without judgment. When I finished, she said, "I understand. This happens more often than you would think. Let me ask you, is the house in your name?" "Only," I said, "yes." "Just me?" She said. "Then legally, you are clear to sell." "What about the people currently living there?" I said. "My daughter and her boyfriend. But they have no legal claim. They never paid rent. There is no lease." She said, "Okay. We will need to give them notice before showings, but we can make this work." "How fast do you want to move?" I said. "How fast can we go?" She said, "In this market, probably 3 to 4 weeks if we price it right. Maybe faster." I said, "Do it." She said, "Are you sure about this, I said, "I have never been more sure of anything in my life." We set up a meeting for that afternoon. I met Patricia at a coffee shop, and we went over all the details. The house was worth about $450,000 based on recent sales in the neighborhood. I still owed about $180,000 on the mortgage. That meant I would walk away with around $250,000 after closing costs. Patricia said, "That is a good amount to start fresh with." I signed the listing agreement right there. Then came the hard part. I had to call Stephanie and tell her what I was doing. I sat in my truck outside the coffee shop and dialed her number. She answered immediately. She said, "Dad." "Where are you?" I said, "I am not coming back." "Stephanie," she said. "What do you mean?" I said, "I am selling the house." Silence. Then she said, "You cannot do that." I said, "Yes, I can. It is my house. My name is on the deed." She said, "But where are we supposed to go?" I said, "That is not my problem anymore. You told me to leave. I left. And now I am selling." Her voice got higher, panicky. She said, "Dad, you cannot be serious." I said, "I am very serious. The realtor will be calling you to schedule showings. Please cooperate with her." Stephanie said, "I am sorry. Okay, I did not mean what I said. Please do not do this," I said. "You had 2 years to figure things out, Stephanie. You did not. Now you have about a month." She said, "A month?" "Dad, that is not enough time," I said. "It will have to be." She said, "Please, can we just talk about this?" I said, "There is nothing left to talk about. The decision is made." I could hear her crying now. She said, "I cannot believe you are doing this to me." And that is when it hit me. Even now, even after everything, she still thought I was the one in the wrong. She still saw herself as the victim. I said, "Goodbye, Stephanie." I hung up. She called back immediately. I did not answer. She called 6 more times. I blocked her number. Kyle called too. I blocked him as well. For the first time in 2 years, my phone was silent. Larry let me stay in his spare bedroom. It was small, just a bed and a dresser, but it was mine. I did not have to share it. I did not have to clean up after anyone. I did not have to walk on eggshells. That night, I slept better than I had in months. 1 week after I walked out, Patricia put up the "for sale" sign in front of the house. She sent me a photo. Big red and white sign right there on the lawn for everyone to see. 30 minutes later, my phone rang. It was a number I did not recognize, but I answered anyway. It was Stephanie. She was calling from a different number since I had blocked her. She was nearly hysterical. She said, "Dad, there is a sign in front of the house." I said, "I told you I was selling." She said, "I thought you were bluffing." I said, "I do not bluff, Stephanie." She said, "Dad, please, we do not have anywhere to go." I said, "You had 2 years to figure that out. You chose not to." She said, "I am sorry. I am so sorry for what I said. Please, just give us more time." I said, "Time will not change anything. You need to learn to stand on your own feet." She was crying hard now. She said, "What do you want from me?" I said, "I wanted respect. I wanted gratitude. I wanted you to take responsibility for your own life. But I never got any of that." She said, "I will change. Kyle and I will both get full-time jobs. We will pay you rent. Just please do not sell the house." I said, "It is too late for that." She said, "It is not too late. Just take the house off the market. Please." I said, "No." She screamed, "You are ruining my life." I said, "No. Stephanie, you did this to yourself." I hung up. She tried calling back from different numbers throughout the day. I stopped answering calls from numbers I did not know. Patricia started bringing potential buyers to see the house. She said Stephanie and Kyle were uncooperative at first, tried to make the house look messy and uninviting. But Patricia was a professional. She made sure the house was cleaned and staged properly before each showing. On the third showing, a young couple named Brad and Samantha fell in love with the place. They had a 2-year-old daughter and another baby on the way. They were looking for a family home with good schools nearby. The house was perfect for them. They made an offer the next day. $435,000. $15,000 below asking price, but it was a strong offer with good financing. Patricia called me and said, "We have an offer. Do you want to counter?" I said, "No. Accept it." She said, "Are you sure we might be able to get closer to asking price if we wait?" I said, "I do not want to wait. I want this done." She said, "Okay, I will draw up the paperwork." The closing date was set for 3 weeks out. During those 3 weeks, Stephanie tried everything. She called from borrowed phones. She showed up at the plumbing company where I worked, caused a scene in the parking lot, until my boss had to ask her to leave. She sent me long text messages from new numbers, begging and pleading and apologizing, but I did not respond to any of it. Kyle tried a different approach. He sent me a message threatening to sue me for illegal eviction. I forwarded it to Patricia. She laughed and said he had no case. They were not tenants. They never paid rent. There was no lease. They had no legal leg to stand on. 2 weeks before closing, Stephanie tried one more time. She sent me an email. It was long and rambling. She said she understood now what she had done wrong. She said she had been selfish and ungrateful. She said she and Kyle had both found full-time jobs and were looking for an apartment. She said she just needed a little more time. I read the email twice. Part of me wanted to believe her. Part of me wanted to call off the sale and give her another chance. But then I remembered the look on her face when she told me to pay rent or get out. I remembered 2 years of being disrespected in my own home. I remembered working myself into the ground while she and Kyle lived like entitled children. I deleted the email. The morning of the closing arrived. It was a Wednesday. I met Patricia at the title company office at 9 in the morning. Brad and Samantha were there with their little daughter. They looked excited and nervous, the way people do when they are about to buy their first house. We sat around a big table and signed what felt like 100 documents. Every signature brought me closer to freedom. The title company rep explained each form, but I barely listened. I just signed where they told me to sign. At 9:40 that morning, while I was sitting in that office signing away my house, my phone started buzzing. I had it on silent, but I could see the screen lighting up over and over. Different numbers, text messages, voicemails piling up. It was Stephanie and Kyle finally realizing this was really happening. The new owners were taking possession today. They had to be out. I ignored the calls and kept signing. By 10:15, it was done. The house was no longer mine. I walked out of that office with a cashier's check for $247,000. After paying off the mortgage, and closing costs, that is what I had left. Patricia shook my hand. She said, "I hope you find peace, Don." I said, "I already have." I drove to the bank and deposited the check. Then I went to Larry's apartment and just sat on the couch for a while, letting it all sink in. My phone was still going crazy. 23 missed calls, 15 text messages, 7 voicemails. I finally listened to one of the voicemails. It was Stephanie, her voice breaking. She said, "Dad, they are here. The new owners are here. We do not have anywhere to put our stuff. Please call me back." Please, I deleted it. Another message from Kyle. He was angry. He said, "This is messed up, man. You just made your own daughter homeless. I hope you are happy." I deleted that one too. I sat there thinking about what he said. Had I made them homeless? Or had they made themselves homeless by refusing to grow up and take responsibility? I knew the answer. The weeks after the sale were strange. I moved into a small one-bedroom apartment on the other side of Phoenix. It was a quarter the size of the house, but it was mine. Just mine. No one else's mess to clean. No one else's bills to pay. No drama. No noise. Just peace. I paid 6 months' rent up front with money from the sale. I bought some basic furniture. I got a new phone number and only gave it to people I trusted. I blocked Stephanie and Kyle on every platform I could think of. Larry told me I should feel guilty, but I did not. I felt lighter than I had in years. I found out through a mutual acquaintance that Stephanie and Kyle had managed to find a cheap apartment across town. They were both working full-time jobs now, splitting rent and bills like actual adults. The acquaintance said Stephanie seemed stressed, but okay. I kept working as a plumber, but I cut back my hours. I did not need to kill myself anymore. I had money in the bank. I could afford to take a day off when my back hurt. I could afford to say no to jobs I did not want. I started doing things I had not done in years. I went fishing with Larry on weekends. I joined a local chess club and played every Thursday night. I took a weekend trip to Sedona just because I wanted to see the Red Rocks again. I was 56 years old, and for the first time in decades, I was living for myself. About 4 months after I sold the house, I got a message request on social media. It was from Stephanie. She had created a new account because I had blocked her old one. The message said, "Dad, can we talk?" Please, I stared at that message for a long time. My first instinct was to delete it, but something made me hesitate. I wrote back about what? She responded immediately. She said, "I want to apologize, really apologize, not because I want something, just because you deserve to hear it." We agreed to meet at a coffee shop the following Saturday, neutral territory. I got there first and waited. When Stephanie walked in, I almost did not recognize her. She looked older, thinner. There were dark circles under her eyes. She was wearing work clothes, a uniform from some retail store. She sat down across from me and just started crying. She said, "I am so sorry, Dad, for everything, for taking advantage of you, for being so selfish, for saying those horrible things." I did not say anything. I just let her talk. She said, "I did not understand what you were doing for me. I did not appreciate it. I thought I was entitled to it because I was your daughter. But you did not owe me anything, and I treated you terribly." I said, "Yes, you did." She said Kyle and I broke up. Turns out he was just using me to have a place to stay. When we got our own apartment and had to actually pay bills, he could not handle it. He left 2 months ago. I said, "I am sorry to hear that." She said, "I am not. I should have listened to you about him. You were right about a lot of things." She told me about her life now, working 40 hours a week at a department store, living paycheck to paycheck, struggling to make rent, finally understanding what it meant to be an adult. She said, "I know I do not deserve your forgiveness, but I want you to know that I get it now. I understand what you sacrificed for me, and I am sorry I threw it back in your face. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and I saw something I had not seen in years. Humility, growth, maturity. I said, I forgive you. She started crying again. She said, really? I said, yes. But things cannot go back to the way they were. She said, I know. I do not expect them to. I said, if we are going to have a relationship, it needs to be different. We need to respect each other. She nodded. She said, I want that. I really do. We talked for 2 hours that day. Really talked the way we used to when she was younger. It was not perfect. There was still hurt between us. But it was a start. Over the next few months, we met for coffee every couple of weeks. Slowly, carefully, we started rebuilding our relationship. Not as dependent child and provider father, but as two adults who cared about each other. She never asked me for money. She never asked to move back in. She took responsibility for her own life, and I was proud of her for that. We will never have the same relationship we had before. That is gone, and honestly, it should be. It was not healthy, but we have something new now, something better, something built on mutual respect instead of obligation. So here I am today, a year and a half after I sold that house and walked away from the life I thought I was supposed to live. I am 58 now, still working as a plumber, but on my own terms. Still living in my small apartment. Still finding joy in the simple things. People ask me if I regret what I did. The answer is no. Not for a second. Selling that house was the hardest decision I ever made. Walking away from my daughter when she needed help went against every instinct I had as a father. But it was also the best thing I could have done for both of us. Stephanie needed to learn that the world does not owe her anything. That love is not the same as being a doormat. That respect has to be earned and maintained. She never would have learned those lessons if I had kept enabling her. And I needed to learn that giving everything does not make you a good parent. That sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let someone face the consequences of their choices. That I deserve to be treated with dignity, even by my own child. The money from the house is still in the bank, most of it anyway. I'm saving it for retirement. Maybe I will buy a little place someday, somewhere quiet. Maybe I will travel. I do not know yet. But the point is, I have options now. I have freedom. Stephanie is doing well. She got promoted at her job. She has her own apartment, pays her own bills, takes care of herself. We have dinner together once a month, and we actually enjoy each other's company. She tells me about her life, and I tell her about mine. We laugh together. We have real conversations. She thanked me recently for selling the house. She said it was the wake-up call she needed. She said she is a better person now because I forced her to grow up. I did not know what to say to that. I just hugged her. Looking back at that morning when she screamed at me to pay rent or get out, I can see it differently now. It was not just her being cruel. It was her hitting rock bottom in her own way. She had become so entitled, so disconnected from reality, that she actually believed she had the right to kick me out of my own house. And my response, walking away and selling the house, was not revenge. It was self-respect. It was me finally saying enough. It was me choosing my own well-being over the fear of losing her. The truth is, I did not lose her. I saved both of us. So if you are watching this and you are in a similar situation, let me tell you something. It is okay to set boundaries with people you love. It is okay to say no. It is okay to walk away when you are being mistreated, even if that person is family. Love should not cost you your peace. Love should not cost you your dignity. And real love The kind that actually matters can survive boundaries. In fact, it gets stronger because of them. My relationship with Stephanie is proof of that. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to make a tough choice between helping someone and helping yourself? How did you handle it? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and share this video with someone who might need to hear it. Subscribe to this channel if you have not already, because I believe we all have stories worth telling, and sometimes those stories can help someone else find their way. Thank you for listening to mine. I hope whatever you are going through, you find the strength to choose yourself when you need to. You deserve that. We all do. Take care of yourselves out there. And remember, sometimes the hardest choices lead to the most freedom.